There is a soil buried along the banks of the Amazon that has stayed alive for 2,000 years, not fertile for a season, not fertile for a lifetime, fertile for 2,000 years, through floods, through droughts, through the rise and fall of whole civilizations, still black, still rich, still growing food today, in the middle of a rainforest, sitting on some of the poorest dirt on Earth. The people who live near it have a name for it. They call it Terra Preta, the dark earth. And for a long time, the scientists who came to study the Amazon walked right over it, because the story they had been told was that this place could never have fed more than a handful of people. The ground was too poor. The jungle ate everything. Then they dug into the black earth, and the story fell apart. Because Terra Preta is not natural. Someone made it. Someone, more than 2,000 years ago, took the worst soil in the world and turned it into the best. And then it was forgotten so completely that we spent 500 years insisting it was impossible. The thing they used to do it is sitting in your barbecue right now. It is charcoal. So here's the question worth asking before we go any further. If a handful of charcoal can keep soil alive for 2,000 years, through exactly the kind of heat and drought that kills a modern garden in a single July, then why has no one ever told you to put it in the ground? Why do we buy a bag of fertilizer every spring that is gone by autumn, when the people who came before us built soil that outlived them by 100 generations? Who decided that the thing you could make for free was worth less than the thing you have to buy again every year? Let's trace it back. The man who dragged Terra Preta back into the light was a Dutch soil scientist named Wim Sombroek. In the 1960s, he found these black soils in the Amazon and could not let them go. He had grown up on poor farmland in the Netherlands that his own family had improved by mixing in old sods and ash and waste, a quieter, colder cousin of the same idea. He spent the rest of his life arguing that this dark earth was not a fluke of the jungle, but a thing human hands had made, deliberately, over centuries. He was right. We now know that pre-Columbian peoples across the Amazon built these soils on a scale that is hard to take in. Patches of engineered black earth scattered across an area the size of a small country. They did it by burying charcoal. Char from cooking fires, from cleared brush, burned slow and low, so it turned to carbon instead of ash. They worked it into the ground along with bones, broken pottery, food waste, and manure. And the charcoal did something that compost alone never could. It stayed. That is the part to hold on to, because it is the whole secret. Ordinary organic matter rots. You dig in compost, the soil life eats it, and within a season or two it is gone, and you are digging in more. Charcoal does not rot. Once it is in the ground, it can sit there structurally intact for 1,000 years or longer. And while it sits there, it works. Here is how. When wood is burned slowly with very little air, not into ash, but into black, brittle char, what is left behind is almost pure carbon, and it is riddled with millions of microscopic pores. A single handful contains an internal surface area you could measure in acres. Think of it less like a lump of fuel and more like a vast, empty honeycomb. Put that honeycomb in the soil, and every one of those pores becomes shelter. Water soaks into them and is held there, released slowly to roots long after the surface has dried out. That is exactly why this matters in a hot, dry garden, and why a soil full of charcoal can shrug off a drought that flattens the bed next to it. The same pores hold onto nutrients that would otherwise wash straight through in the next heavy rain, keeping them in reach of the plant instead of letting them drain away. And those countless tiny chambers become a city for the fungi and bacteria that feed your plants. A place to live that does not get destroyed every time the weather turns. Water held, nutrients held, soil life housed. For centuries, from one application. That is what the people of the dark earth understood, and it is what we were somehow taught to forget. Now, this is the part the loud versions of this story leave out, and it is the part that decides whether it works for you or wastes your time. You cannot just throw barbecue charcoal on your garden and walk away. Fresh charcoal, straight from the fire, is empty. All those millions of pores are sitting there, hungry. If you bury them bare, they will do exactly what they are built to do: pull in water and nutrients. But if they do that in your garden, they will pull those resources out of your soil and away from your plants. For the first season, raw charcoal can actually make your garden worse. This is the single reason most people who try this give up and decide it was a myth. They skipped one step. The step is this: you charge it first. You soak the charcoal in something rich: compost, diluted manure, worm tea, or even just compost and water left to sit together for a week or two, so that every pore fills up before it ever goes in the ground. Charged charcoal arrives full. It comes into your soil already loaded, ready to hold and to feed instead of to rob. That is the difference between the black earth that fed the Amazon and a bag of useless dust. I'll be honest with you about the rest of it too, because most people telling this story won't be. Charcoal is not magic, and the numbers people throw around, like 4 times the growth or fertilizer made obsolete forever, are not what the careful research shows. What it shows is steadier and more believable. Across hundreds of trials worldwide, a long-term yield increase of around 1 in 6. And the poorer and more punished your soil is, the more it helps. In salt-burdened, drought-stressed ground, the kind that is spreading as summers get hotter, the gains climb closer to 4 in 10. This was never a trick for soil that is already perfect. It is a way to bring dead ground back to life and keep it alive, which is exactly the problem most of us are actually facing. If you want the full method written out, including how to make char safely from yard waste, the charging recipe, how much to work into a bed, and how to do it without harming what is already growing, it is one of the methods in the field guide I keep down in the description, alongside the rest of the old ways of keeping a garden alive through heat and drought. It is there if you want it, but you do not need it to start. So let me give you the bones of it right now. Here is how charcoal goes into the ground. You start by making char or buying it plain. Use natural lump charcoal, nothing with lighter fluid, nothing with additives, or true biochar if you can find it. You break it down small, into pieces no bigger than a fingertip, because the more surface you expose, the more it can hold. Then you charge it. Drop the broken char into a bucket, cover it with compost and water or a weak feed, and let it sit 1 or 2 weeks until it has drunk its fill. Then work the charged char into the top several inches of your bed. Around 1/10 of the soil by volume is plenty to begin with. Then plant as you normally would, and then you essentially never do it again. That is the whole strange gift of it. You add compost every year. Charcoal you add once, and it keeps working long after you are gone, the same way it has kept working in the Amazon for 2,000 years. Which brings us back to the question we started with. We did not stop using charcoal because it failed. It never failed. It is still out there in the dark earth, still fertile, still proving itself every single day. We stopped because somewhere along the way the world decided that soil was something you buy by the bag, every spring, forever, and a thing you can make for free out of burned wood and let work for 1,000 years does not fit on that shelf. The knowledge was never lost. It was just never sold to you. Now you have it. So tell me, down in the comments, what does your soil look like where you are? Is it sand that water runs straight through, or heavy clay? Or the tired, gray, worn-out ground so many of us are trying to bring back to life? Tell me what you're working with. And if you want the rest of these, the old methods for keeping a garden alive through heat and drought that nobody teaches anymore, subscribe and stay with me. The next one is the method the people of the dark earth used right alongside the charcoal, the buried wood that turns a whole bed into a sponge. It works best in exactly the soils most of you are about to describe. I'll see you then. Keep it alive out there.